The morning sky over Lincoln High was pale and quiet. The sun was just beginning to touch the edges of the old red school building. Students hurried through the halls carrying books, talking loudly and laughing about weekend plans. Mr. Cole Benson, the history teacher, was standing by his classroom door, holding a tablet and checking attendance. He liked order and quiet mornings. He believed discipline made life safe and calm. Cole had been teaching for 6 years. He was known for being patient but serious. The students respected him, though they sometimes called him too strict. He was not the kind of teacher who smiled much, but when he did, it meant something. He loved history and often said it taught people how to be human. That morning, he had no idea his calm life was about to change in ways he could never expect. At 9 o'clock, the principal, Mrs. Leonard, walked down the hallway with a girl by her side. The girl was tall, slim, and dressed in a plain gray hoodie. Her hair was tied back carelessly, and her eyes were tired but sharp. She was introduced as Alina Marlowe, a transfer student. Mrs. Leonard whispered to Cole that Alina had recently moved to the city and might need time to adjust. Cole nodded politely and told Alina to take a seat next to the window. Alina said nothing. She sat down, opened a notebook, and stared outside as if she wished to be anywhere else. Her classmates stole curious glances. Nobody knew who she was or why she had transferred so late in the term. Some students whispered that she must have done something wrong in her last school. Alina heard but ignored them. Cole began the morning lesson on the civil rights movement. He asked questions, and hands shot up eagerly. But he noticed Alina never looked at him. She seemed deep in her own thoughts. At one point, a student named Liam made a sarcastic comment about rich girls from private schools. Laughter followed from the back row. Alina's eyes turned fierce. She stood up and told him to be quiet. When Liam refused, she pushed his chair slightly. Not hard, but enough to make him turn pale and angry. The classroom went silent. Cole stepped in quickly. "That's enough," he said in a firm, calm voice. But the tension was already alive. Liam shouted that she had attacked him. Alina tried to speak, but her voice came out shaking. "He was mocking me," she said, but nobody heard her properly. Mrs. Leonard came running from the office after a call from another teacher who had witnessed the situation through the open door. She told Cole to call the police because the school had strict rules about violence. Cole hesitated. He looked at Alina, who now stood completely still, her hands clenched on her notebook. She looked frightened, not angry. Still, rules were rules. He made the call with a heavy heart. Within minutes, 2 officers arrived. The flashing lights from their car painted the orange walls blue and red. Students gathered near the windows, pressing their faces to the glass in curiosity. Lena watched the officers approach, her eyes bright with disbelief. She whispered to Cole, "You will regret this, not because of who I am, but because of what you are making me lose." Then she lowered her head and followed them quietly. Cole felt a strange chill. He expected her to protest or cry, but she walked away with calm dignity. Mrs. Leonard tried to justify the decision, saying it was policy. Cole nodded, but doubt started growing inside him. After the incident, the school buzzed with gossip. Some said Alina came from a troubled home. Others claimed she had been expelled before. No one knew the truth. Cole stayed late that day, staring at the empty seat by the window. He thought about the way she looked at the sky during class and how her words before leaving felt heavy with meaning. When he finally left the building, the parking lot was quiet and rain had started to fall. He stood under the awning and tried to calm his thoughts. He told himself he had done the right thing, that safety came first. But his conscience whispered that something was wrong. He had seen fear in Elena's eyes, not guilt. Driving home that evening, he couldn't stop replaying her last sentence. Regret was not a word many students used. It sounded grown, almost philosophical. Something about her voice reminded him of years ago when he made choices out of caution and lost something valuable. He didn't know what hurt more, the idea that she might have needed help he didn't give, or that he might never see her again to make it right. That night, as he sat at his kitchen table, the sound of sirens echoed faintly outside his window. He tried to read over his lesson plan for the next day, but instead saw the memory of a gray hoodie and a brave, silent face walking away under flashing lights. The next morning at Lincoln High was different. The hallways that were usually loud now carried a strange hush. Everyone was whispering about what had happened the day before. Some students said the new girl got arrested. Others said she was dangerous. Nobody really knew the truth. Mr. Cole Benson walked into his classroom with heavy steps. He had hardly slept all night. He kept thinking about the look in Alina Marlowe's eyes before the police led her away. He tried to focus on grading papers, but his mind would not rest. The chair near the window sat empty, and it bothered him more than he wanted to admit. At lunchtime, Mrs. Leonard entered his class to speak in private. Her expression was tight and careful. She told him that Alina had been released after a few hours. There would be no charges because the boy she pushed was not injured. Then she said something that made Cole freeze in place. Alina Marlowe was the daughter of Lucas Marlowe, one of the richest men in the state. Her father owned a string of companies and gave millions every year to educational projects, including some at Lincoln High itself. Cole was speechless. He had never felt so foolish. He had called the police on a girl whose father financed half of the school programs. Mrs. Leonard warned that reporters might come and that everyone should be careful what they said. She looked nervous. Cole only nodded while trying to steady his thoughts. That afternoon, he read an email from the district office explaining that Alina would return to class in a few days. They wanted to handle the situation quietly and repair the school's image. The message used careful words like misunderstanding and unfortunate event. But none of it eased Cole's guilt. He had acted by the book, yet the result felt wrong in his heart. When he went home that evening, he walked past the greenhouse behind the building. The rain from the day before had stopped, and the air smelled of wet grass. Through the glass walls, he saw someone sitting inside on the small wooden bench. It was Alina. She was alone, her hood pushed back, sketching on a piece of paper. He hesitated, then walked closer. She looked up but did not speak. Cole stepped inside and stood beside the door. The soft light from inside touched her face. She looked tired yet calm. Her eyes showed no fear, only deep sadness. "I heard they let you go," he said slowly. "I am glad you are safe." She smiled faintly, a small, polite smile that did not reach her eyes. "It's fine," she said. "Things like this happen." "No," Cole replied quietly. "They shouldn't happen. I made a mistake." Alina shook her head. "You did what the school told you. That's not your fault. People always think they know who others are. They act before they listen." Cole listened carefully. Her voice was soft but carried an honesty beyond her age. "Have you ever been misunderstood so completely that words fail?" she asked suddenly. The question caught him off guard. He thought about his own life, his marriage that had ended because he could never explain his fears, his silence when people expected words. "Yes," he said after a pause. "I know that feeling very well." She looked back at her drawing. It was a pattern of thin lines, like threads weaving together. "When that happens," she said, "you stop trying to explain yourself. You start living as if no one can really see you." The greenhouse was quiet again. The faint hum of the heating system was the only sound. Cole wanted to say something comforting but found no perfect words. Instead, he just stood by her. The air between them was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was a silence that spoke for both of them. As he left, Alina said softly, "You don't have to feel sorry for me, Mr. Benson. Just teach me your history lessons. That will be enough." He nodded and walked away, his chest filled with mixed feelings. He knew he would see her differently now. Not as a student who caused trouble, but as someone carrying invisible weight. The next few days brought reporters who tried to reach the school gates, but the administration kept them out. The story still spread through town and online, yet soon the noise faded. People moved on. When Alina finally returned to class, the room felt tense. Some students looked at her with guilt, others with curiosity. Cole started the lesson as usual, pretending not to notice, but he saw her sit quietly by the window again. This time, when she looked outside, her face seemed peaceful. During recess, he saw a small smile appear as she helped another student pick up spilled papers. It was tiny, but real.
Ow.
Cole wondered how someone could forgive so easily. That night, when he prepared for bed, he realized something had shifted deep inside him. He no longer saw his job as just teaching facts and dates. He wanted to understand people, to truly listen before acting. The memory of police lights still troubled him, but somewhere within that memory, he felt a spark of purpose beginning to grow again. Weeks passed, and the teachers and students at Lincoln High started to act as if nothing had ever happened. Yet for Cole Benson, the history teacher, things were different now. Every time he saw Elena Marlowe sitting quietly near the window, he felt both guilt and admiration. She had returned to school after all the chaos, calm and polite, never speaking about what had happened. Her courage surprised him. The rest of the class did not dare to tease her anymore. They whispered sometimes, but Elena ignored the whispers. She came on time, worked silently, and turned in perfect assignments. Cole found himself watching her more closely. It was not the way a teacher watches a student, but the way one person notices another as quiet strength. Elena never tried to get attention, yet she drew it naturally. When she read history texts aloud, her voice was steady and thoughtful. She seemed to understand meaning behind words, not just the surface facts. There was something old in her thinking, as if she had lived more than her age could show. One day after class, Cole noticed she did not leave with the others. She sat at her desk, drawing in her notebook. The pages were filled with strange symbols and lines that looked like threads crossing each other. He walked closer and asked, "What are those drawings?" She looked up and smiled in a shy way. "I call them maps for the heart," she said. "When people get lost inside themselves, these can help find the way back." Cole nodded slowly. He'd never heard a student speak like that. "Do they work?" he asked. Elena paused before answering. "Sometimes they remind me that everything connects somehow, even mistakes." Her words stayed in his mind all evening. He realized she was teaching him more than he was teaching her. In the weeks that followed, Elena often stayed behind after school. She said she liked the quiet classroom when everyone had gone home. Cole did not mind. Sometimes he corrected papers while she drew or read books from the small shelf near the window. They began to talk more. It started with history questions, but slowly moved into personal conversations. One afternoon, she asked him why he decided to become a teacher. He told her that when he was young, he wanted to be an archaeologist, but life had different plans. He said teaching was a way to feel close to all the stories of the past. She listened carefully, and after a long pause, she said, "My father says money builds the world, but I think stories build the heart of it." Cole smiled at her answer. "I think your father would disagree," he said. She shrugged. "He disagrees with most things I say." Her tone was quiet, but free of anger. Cole understood then that being a millionaire's daughter was not as easy as people thought. Over time, a kind of friendship grew between them, quiet but sincere. The rule between teacher and student stayed unbroken, yet there was something invisible forming, a line that connected their thoughts and silences. Cole began to look forward to seventh period more than any other part of the day. When he spoke about history, her eyes followed every word as if it truly mattered. One rainy afternoon, the power in the school went out for a few minutes. The lights flickered, then died, leaving only the gray daylight through the window. The students whispered nervously. Cole told them to stay calm and wait. Elena turned her face toward the light and said softly, "It feels like the world stops blinking for a while." Her words were simple, yet they made him notice how quiet the rain sounded. When the lights came back, he caught her smiling to herself. He wondered what it meant when two people understood the same silence. When the semester moved into spring, Cole started a project on personal history. Each student had to tell a story from their family. Elena's story stunned the whole class. She talked about her mother, who had died when she was 10, and how she had told Elena that love was like a string tied between souls. "You may not see it," she said to the class, "but it is there, pulling gently when you start to drift too far away." Even the students who once mocked her listened in silence. At the end, a few of them clapped softly. Cole felt a lump in his throat. He wrote a note on her paper later that day. "Beautiful work. Thank you for sharing your story." That evening, when she passed by his desk to hand him another drawing, she said, "You wrote, thank you. Thank you. Most people never thank me for my words." He looked at her and said, "That's because most people don't really listen." She nodded as if the answer made sense. She left the classroom quietly, her notebook pressed against her chest. Cole watched her go and realized he had stopped thinking of her as just his student long ago. He cared for her peace, her dreams, the way she walked through the world like someone protecting a secret hope. What he did not know was that others had started to notice their quiet bond. Some students whispered again, not cruelly this time, but with a mix of curiosity and envy.
Ow.
They could feel something was forming that even the rules of school could not quite define. The spring fair arrived at Lincoln High, on a warm Friday evening. The air smelled like popcorn and cotton candy, and the sound of laughter carried across the open field behind the school. Colorful lights hung from the fences, and families came to enjoy the games and food stalls. For many students, it was a night for fun, but for Cole Benson, the history teacher, it was a night filled with mixed feelings. He had agreed to help at the charity booth, but his thoughts were elsewhere. Over the past months, his quiet friendship with Alina Marlowe had grown into something deep that he tried not to name. He told himself again and again that she was his student, that he must stay distant, but his heart began to ignore what his mind kept repeating. As the sun began to set, he saw Alina walking across the schoolyard. She wore a simple light blue dress and carried a small canvas bag with her sketches inside. Her hair was loose, moving gently in the breeze. People turned to look at her. Some whispered things behind their hands, but Alina kept her head high and smiled politely. Cole felt a strange mix of pride and worry. He wanted everyone to treat her kindly, but he knew not everyone would. Later that evening, Cole walked past the planetarium to check the lights. The soft glow of the fair reached that corner faintly, leaving it quiet and half-dark. He stopped when he heard muffled voices behind the building. A group of parents and a few older students stood in a circle, talking in low tones. Their words were not friendly. One woman laughed and said something sharp about how the rich girl was using her father's money to clean her mistakes. Another person added that money could buy anything, even forgiveness. Cole froze as he realized they were talking about Alina. He wanted to step forward, to tell them they were wrong. Yet before he could move, he saw Alina around the corner. She had heard everything. Her face turned pale and her hands trembled as she held her bag tighter. She turned quickly and walked away toward the quiet path by the planetarium. He followed her without knowing what to say, found her sitting behind the building, her eyes red, tears on her cheeks. She tried to wipe them away fast when she saw him. "I am fine," she said, her voice shaking. "You don't have to worry." But she clearly was not fine. Cole sat on the grass at a short distance from her. "You have every right to be upset," he said softly. "They don't understand you." She looked at the ground. "They don't need to. People see what they want. To them, I will always be the spoiled daughter who gets away with anything." He hesitated, then answered, "That is not who you are. I see you for what you truly are. You are brave, thoughtful, and kind. You care deeply, even when no one notices." Her eyes lifted at his words. The street lamp shone just enough to show her face, wet but glowing faintly. "Why do you say that?" she asked. "Because it's true," he said. "You've changed the way I see everything, the way I teach, the way I listen. You reminded me that rules without heart mean nothing." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sounds of the fair drifted faintly through the air, far away and almost unreal. "I am leaving," she said finally. "My father wants me to move back to the city. He thinks this place is bad for my image. He says I have to start fresh somewhere else." Cole felt his chest tighten. "When will you leave?" "Next week," she said. Her voice was calm, too calm for someone about to leave behind everything she knew. "I wanted to tell you after the fair." He could not find any words that sounded right. He wanted to say that she had become the brightest part of his quiet life, but he kept that thought inside. Instead, he said, "I will miss having you in class." She smiled a little. "You will be fine, Mr. Benson. You were fine before I came." He shook his head. "No, I was only surviving before you came." Her eyes softened, full of sadness and warmth. She reached into her bag and took out a folded sheet of paper. It was another one of her drawings, but this one was different. It showed two strings running side by side, twisting near the edges but never merging. She handed it to him. "This one is for you," she said. He held the paper carefully. "What does it mean?" "It means that sometimes two people are meant to walk on their own paths, yet they are still connected by something invisible," she said. "Even if they are apart, they feel the same pull of the same thread." Cole wanted to speak, but his throat was tight. She stood up, wiped her face, and gave him a small, almost peaceful smile. "Thank you for listening to me when others didn't," she said. "That means more than you think." She walked away slowly toward the bright lights of the fair. He stayed behind, holding the paper in his hand. The grass was wet, the air filled with the faint echo of laughter from students. and parents who did not understand what had just passed between the teacher and the girl who had taught him how empathy felt. As he watched her disappear into the crowd, Cole finally let his tears fall. He knew some ties never broke, even when distance tried to stretch them thin. The night felt still, full of quiet grief and quiet grace, and above everything else, one truth rang in his heart. He would never forget her. 5 years passed after that spring night when Alina Marlowe left Lincoln High. Time changed many things in the small city. New buildings rose near the school, and faces that once filled the classrooms were gone. But for Cole Benson, the history teacher, some memories refused to fade. He had kept one folded drawing locked inside his desk drawer all those years, the one with the 2 strings running side by side. He rarely looked at it, but it was always there, like a quiet reminder of something he could not explain or forget. Cole no longer taught at the high school. He had moved on to a small university 2 hours away, where he lectured on history and ethics. Students liked his classes because he spoke with care and honesty, not from notes, but from the heart. He had gained calmness, yet also a deep sort of loneliness. He sometimes walked into the lecture hall early, sitting in the half-light, remembering a time when one student had changed the rhythm of his days. One bright autumn morning, Cole was preparing for a special ceremony. The university was opening a new library building funded by a well-known educational foundation. He had been asked to give a short speech about the importance of knowledge and compassion. As he adjusted his tie, he thought again about how strange it was that life always circled back to lessons of empathy. The event filled the university courtyard with guests, faculty, and reporters. A large banner read, "The Marlowe Foundation presents the Benson Library for Learning." Cole froze when he read the name. He had no idea the donation came from the Marlowe Foundation. A soft pang of memories hit him, but he continued walking to the podium. Cameras flashed as he stepped up to speak. He began his speech as planned, his voice steady and clear. He spoke about how learning should never be about power or fame, but understanding and kindness. He said mistakes were part of every journey, and that redemption began with listening. As he looked at the audience, his eyes moved across the rows of faces until they stopped at one that made his words falter. In the very front row sat a young woman wearing a simple beige coat. Her hair was longer now, and her eyes seemed deeper than before, but he knew her face at once. It was Alina Marlowe. She was older, but carried the same calm strength that used to fill his classroom. Their eyes met across the space between stage and audience, and for a second, it felt as if the years between them had never passed. After the ceremony, as people talked and moved around, Alina approached him. She did not have the nervousness of a student anymore. She walked with quiet confidence, her posture straight but warm. "It has been a long time," she said softly. "Yes," Cole answered. "A long time, but it feels like yesterday." They stood together near the fountain. The light breeze lifted a strand of her hair, and she smiled. "You are a professor now," she said. "I heard students talk about your kindness and your way of teaching. You still help them find their place." He smiled gently. "You were the one who taught me how to listen. I should be thanking you." She lowered her gaze for a moment. "My father started the foundation after I told him about Lincoln High. I said schools needed more teachers who cared about students. He agreed to build something that carried both our names. That library is also a thank you to you." Cole looked at her with quiet wonder. "You did not have to do that. I wanted to," she said. "I wanted to finish a story that was left open." They walked around the courtyard, speaking about the old school and how things had changed. She told him about her work running education programs across the country. She spent her days helping students who had been ignored or misunderstood. "I see myself in them," she said. "I do not want anyone to feel unseen." He listened carefully, realizing that the young girl who once sat by the window had become a woman who carried grace like a promise. As the crowd began to leave, they stopped near one of the marble benches outside the new building. Alina looked at him with that same clear honesty he remembered. "The strings never broke," she said simply. "They only stretched until the time was right." Cole felt something inside him relax, as if an old ache had finally healed. He looked at her and smiled. "I kept your drawing," he said, "all these years. I think it was waiting for today." She smiled too. "Then keep it a little longer." Some strings are meant to last beyond one lifetime. The sun was setting behind the tall buildings, painting the sky orange and soft gold. They stood in silence for a while, not needing to say more. The past was behind them, yet it had brought them to this peaceful moment. Later, as Cole watched her walk away through the courtyard, he felt no pain, only quiet gratitude. Their story had begun with misunderstanding and regret, but ended in forgiveness and understanding. The invisible string between their souls had pulled them together again. It's not for romance or longing, but for recognition of what they had taught each other about heart, truth, and compassion. He walked back toward the library, listening to the sound of leaves moving under his shoes. The name on the wall glowed softly in the sunset. He touched the letters lightly and smiled, knowing that some connections never fade. They only grow stronger with time.